Last week, a bill known as Maeve's Law passed the Senate. Now, you might not have heard about it, but it's an incredibly far-reaching piece of legislation. Maeve's Law legalises trials of mitochondrial donation, an IVF technique which replaces one woman's defective mitochondria with those from another woman's egg to help the first woman conceive a healthy child. It's sold as a way of preventing catastrophic mitochondrial disease in babies, which for afflicted families, it does. But in practice, what it also allows is the creation of embryos, children, with more than 2 genetic parents, 3 genetic parents. Now, that's a huge leap for humanity to make, and as I argued when I wrote about it on the weekend in the newspaper, this is such a big issue, it should be subject to community debate, rather than something rammed through the parliament in its dying days. National Party Senator Matt Canavan voted against this legislation. He tried to amend it, make it better. He failed. He joins me now. Senator, look, I know this is all over bar the shouting. This has passed through the parliament, but I just think it's wrong that we don't have the public in on what's now being legislated as law in Australia. Tell us not just the detail there about mitochondrial, but the ramifications of what the Parliament's just passed.
Well, Peter, I congratulate you for highlighting this because, yes, the vote on this legislation is done and dusted, but there are going to be many more debates in the future about gene therapies. Mitochondrial disease is a terrible condition for those it afflicts, and hopefully this mechanism may provide some relief to families in that situation. But what I'm more concerned about is the techniques here, which allow scientists to play God, if you like, and amend our genes as human beings. Now, these techniques do so, as you say, through the donation of DNA between 2 different mothers in this case. But there are other techniques too that are emerging, like CRISPR, which effectively allows scientists to go into an embryo and just change people's genetic makeup like it's a computer program, like it's a code. And I think we needed much, much greater debate about this as a society. And I'm very concerned under this legislation, the total lack of regulation and oversight about what scientists are doing.
Well, Deb O'Neill, a Labor senator from New South Wales, she spoke about this issue and she said, she had a fundamental disagreement with any legislation that enables an embryo to be created for the purposes of research. In my time in politics, I dealt with a lot of these stem cell and embryo issues. There's been a lot of bills, and every single time we got to sort of hear, we were told by the scientists that they don't want to go that far, and so the parliamentarians listen to the community and put in these protections. But it seems every time we go back to this issue, Matt, that the line just keeps getting pushed out to the point that we are canvassing children born in Australia where they have 3 legitimate parents.
Well, you're right to raise that issue, Peter. Myself and Deb and Kimberly Kitching contributed to this debate as well before she sadly passed away. We all supported amendments that sought to remove the ability to create an embryo just simply for its destruction, simply for its use to transfer genetic material, and we failed in that regard. But I do worry here that we are seeing life, we are seeing the human being of existence as something we can play with, and as I say, become God almost. Because where does this end up? Now, I'll be absolutely clear: the mitochondrial legislation does not allow us to create superhumans or anything like that. But there are people doing this thing. There are scientists talking about this, and we've just gone through a period where we've had a global pandemic, probably as a result of the gain of function research that scientists were doing well beyond the eyes and ears of regulators. And now we have a situation where under this legislation, there'll be less regulation of human gene therapy as there is with animal and plant gene therapy that is actually regulated by the Office of Gene Technology Regulator.
What do you mean, Matt? What do you mean?
To these techniques. Well, so currently we set up, or back in the Howard government, that the Howard government established a regulator called the Office of Gene Technology Regulator. This was around the debates of cloning at the time that were occurring after Dolly the sheep, and it was thought that we must have an independent regulator to make sure that there are ethics brought to bear on scientific questions involving the creation, destruction and manipulation of human life. The OGTR will not have a role in oversighting the development of mitochondrial donation techniques. Instead, a committee of scientists will be the only supervision of what goes on. And I just don't think that's good enough because, look, scientists are great people. They're very smart. We should celebrate what they do. But a lot of what they're doing with these techniques raise issues that don't just go to science. They go to our values, our beliefs and principles, and what it is to be a human being. And therefore, there should be ethicists and other just average people having a look and saying what is happening and what are scientists doing behind closed doors. As I say, I go back, who would have thought that US scientists were funding a lab in Wuhan to conduct gain-of-function research on coronaviruses in bats? No one knew that was happening, but it did, and it probably has killed millions of people around the world.
And look, I have to say, I picked this up after it passed the Parliament. There was like a cone of silence on this legislation. That worries me. I know there'll be people watching tonight who support these sorts of changes. There'll be other people that don't. My minimum is there has to be a fair income conversation and debate in the Australian community before people in the Parliament make these really big decisions about, what a human being can be created for and what life looks like into the future. Matt Canavan, I really appreciate your time.